Let me bring in some tweets here. One says, all you have to do is look at the stats to know alcohol wrecks millions of lives daily. Science versus politics and morality. Another one says, less isn't a bit moot with existing data clearly showing overall. This one doesn't make any sense. But anyway, go ahead, Brian. What were you saying about that first one?
That's exactly right.
Another one says marijuana is much safer than alcohol.
We as a society have had a battle over the legalization of alcohol, and it's something that our Constitution has dealt with. And it's something that's allowed. People are allowed to use it. And I drink a beer every once in a while. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But as a society,
and there's nothing wrong with smoking a joint.
Yes,
nothing wrong with smoking. Brian,
because it causes so many problems for our society.
You mean like alcohol?
Look, you have to have reasonable lines, reasonableness, and reasonable lines. I've drawn my line. I think society's drawn the line at marijuana, and you have drawn it in a different place.
What about all those statistics that Alan just cited? And in fact, there is the most recent survey says that 56% of Californians favor legalizing pot for recreational use. So a lot of people are moving that line the same way they did with prohibition.
Well, the bottom line is the people in California will make that decision on Election Day. So we'll see if these poll numbers pan out and what happens.
Hey, Brian,
but if you take a step back to medical marijuana, I think your average American really does believe if you have AIDS, if you have cancer, and if you want to reduce the pain that you have, I think Marinol or some form of marijuana may be something that people think is reasonable for an individual to be allowed to get. The problem is we have rampant abuse. You have people who say they have pain out in California. You've got a proliferation of these marijuana stores where they're selling marijuana.
Brian, those are all effects of prohibition. Everything you're pointing out are the effects of the prohibition. If people are abusing this in California, they're doing it because they're getting around the prohibition of marijuana. Let's just get some more statistics here. While we're sitting here yammering, every 37 seconds, another American is arrested on marijuana charges, 90% of them for possession only. We've arrested 20 million people since 1965, Brian. I don't know how you can possibly support a system where the government violently intervenes in the lives of otherwise productive tax-paying citizens like me.
The government intervenes in the heroin trafficking.
Right.
They shut down crystal meth labs.
Right. But
they're against the distribution of cocaine. So there is a role for the government to stop drugs that are illegal that are harmful to your average American.
The problem is, but following your line of thought, since tobacco kills 400,000 people, chumps like you that smoke tobacco, why would you not be a criminal? Why isn't your act of smoking tobacco an act of moral turpitude? Why do you pretend that it's not an act of moral turpitude? Why do you pretend that people who use marijuana...
I'm not going to accept a lot of your premises. First of all, marijuana is not good for you. It's not good for you.
Just like alcohol and tobacco are not good for you, Brian.
We know that smoking is not good for you, so why don't we make that illegal too? Do you think we should?
Brian, ice cream is not good for you. Would you make ice cream illegal? That's pure fat.
No, I love ice cream. I love it. It's great.
So, Brian, the problem is...
Okay, but ice cream doesn't make you high, Alan. It doesn't impair you.
So what we're talking about here, to use my favorite 25-cent word here, which I hope Brian will appreciate, we're really talking about psychopharmacological McCarthyism. How you like that one?
Whoa.
Right.
Explain that one.
How could we have a society today where alcohol kills 100,000 people a year? All around America today, people will get pulled over for drinking and driving. 400,000 people will die annually just for using tobacco. So
that's right.
So how could we justify arresting and incarcerating somebody who's using a substance that doesn't kill, doesn't addict, and doesn't cause the same problems of the drugs you consume?
It does addict. It is addictive. Marijuana is an addictive drug.
It doesn't
it's a gateway drug to other drugs.
By the way,
Brian, is alcohol a gateway to other things? I mean,
like marijuana? I mean, honestly, take a step back.
Alcohol might lead you to marijuana, might lead you to who knows what else. Cocaine. Listen, why doesn't it work that way?
The gateway effect is absolutely not true. For every 102 people in the United States, according to the government data that measures people who use drugs, for every 102 people who use marijuana, one goes on to use heroin or cocaine. So blessedly, oh thankfully, we do not have a gateway effect. Otherwise, we'd have tens of millions of heroin and cocaine addicts. So thankfully, what we actually see from the data, the first drugs that people use in this society are caffeine, tobacco, alcohol, then marijuana, and then they might go on and try a hard drug. So marijuana is not a gateway drug. It is simply, maybe best described, a drug of terminus. Most Americans will stop using drugs after they try marijuana. Thankfully, so few people will ever go on and experiment with heroin or cocaine.
Let me cite an authority that I don't usually cite, the Obama administration. They have found that marijuana is associated with dependence, with respiratory and mental illness, with poor motor performance and cognitive impairment.
Brian,
that doesn't sound like a good drug to me.
Brian, you could read the same list for alcohol. The point is, I'm trying to get you to expand beyond your clear bias for alcohol.
Wait a minute, hold on, let me get in here.
ABC News Now, good to know.